Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Reconnect with Plant Wisdom. It's me, Tigre Gardenia. I have to admit, I've been avoiding this episode. Not this episode in particular, but I've been really struggling to record an episode. Not because I don't have anything to share, I have a long list. Look, my beautifully fun notebook. I have a long list of topics and things that I've been planning on bringing to you, um, and at the same time, none of those feel adequate right now. Probably because I. Okay, here it is. This is going to be. This is not going to be. This is episode 78, trying to make sense of the world. Welcome to Reconnect with Plant Wisdom. I'm your host, Tigrila Gardenia, nature-inspired mentor and leadership coach. In this podcast, I share ancient and modern knowledge from biology to spirituality about the wondrous ways in which plants can help you lead a naturally conscious life. Okay, so as you know, I am a nature inspired mentor. I'm a life coach, and really my work for the last decade has all been about working closely with the plant kin home to bring, kin's lessons, to bring their wisdom, to bring us in connection with plants, and to bring plants in connection with us. So when the world goes a little bit haywire, usually, and I've actually talked about this in a previous episode where I talked about why I don't really suffer from traditional eco anxiety, because I usually have a combination of my deep connection with plants that helps me sort of see things in a different way, mixed with my spiritual path, which, as you know, I live in Damanhur, one of the largest spiritual eco communities in the world. And living in Damanhur, I have a very, very strong initiatic esoteric base that helps me understand the cosmology of the universe. The other day, I was actually in a ritual dinner. We do these ritual dinners where you get called to in a ritual setting, most of the time in the temples of humankind, which if you've never seen before, please head over to your Google search and put in Damanhur temples of humankind and prepare to be amazed. Our underground temples are really considered the eighth wonder of the world, or how I like to say, the first wonder of the new world. Okay, I didn't coin that. Somebody said it to me once, but I just love it so much. Anyways, so these two things really help me understand the overall kind of game of life that's playing out, and the plants really help me see it from a perspective that's not just tied to kind of the materialistic world that we often live in. I don't say materialistic as in capitalistic, I just mean materialistic as in made out of matter. And so this usually helps me see kind of the overall ecosystem, my role in the ecosystem, where I'm supposed to go, what am I supposed to do, and what's my life purpose and my soul mission mixed with this. So that helps me sort of process a lot of things that I find, they are challenging. But I have to say that right now, this particular, in the moment that I am recording this, it's challenging. I know I understand the messiness from sort of an not intellectual, from a spiritual perspective. I have an episode, saying the world is messy right now and this is why it's a good thing. And I still believe that. But that doesn't mean that I don't suffer in the moment that it's happening from the massive devastation you sometimes see around you, the tower that falls in order to be rebuilt again. You still have to mourn the following, right? The falling, the everything that you lose in that process, or that is being lost in that process. And of course, you have moments of doubt, right? Doubt is an incredibly important part of of the process, of the spiritual process, of the growth process, to ensure that we're not going into arrogance, or we're not getting lost by our ego. That doubt gives you that moment of reflection, that window of making sure that, oh, where does this fit in? Is this really on the right path? What am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to course correct in any way? And so with the events of Hurricane Helene, um, mixed with the political landscape in the United States. And even though I don't currently live in the United States, obviously that is, my, just the same as I struggle when I hear certain things that are happening in Cuba as my heritage, the United States is my heritage. And so I struggle when I hear, some of the things that are happening. Go vote. No matter where you are or what you believe in, go vote. It's so important right now. Um, and so I guess I just wanted to come on and just process a little out loud. One of my clients wrote me a message, and she was telling me, she says, "It's interesting. I feel like I finally gotten to a place of acceptance of change and how that's the biggest lesson." She's working on a documentary film that I was actually in, and she's in the middle of the editing process for it. And she says, she's talking about the fact that this whole idea of acceptance and change, it's connected to climate change, it's connected to flow, to ecology, and many different aspects. I'll make sure I tell you about it when it comes out, because it's without a doubt, based on everything I know about it, it's going to be amazing. Anyway, she says, "It's interesting. I feel like I finally gotten to a place of acceptance of change and how that's the biggest lesson this documentary has shown me. And also, as a major hurricane devastated so many around me," she actually lives in an area that the hurricane passed over, "it's hard to see the light in it. I know it's part of the Earth system, but how do we accept change when it's so catastrophic and devastating? Where do we go from here? The damage is done, so it has to be accepted in some form or another at some point. But how do we learn from this? How do we as humans evolve from this?" And then she asked me if I saw hurricanes as a spirit, like a cleansing spirit in a way. And, these are really great questions. These are super great questions. And I would actually even add a few more. I would add, we know the planet is always changing, right? So we know that the species that are currently coming into being and going extinct, these are two things that are always happening. Species are being born and species are being lost. But given this, my question is, what is the role of humans as a species on our planet, right? Not only how do we evolve, but what does our evolution actually look like? What should it look like? And if you take a step back and you look at the larger picture through that lens of your spiritual belief in combination with your ecological knowledge and your understanding of, the Gaia hypotheses and the fact of how the earth is always shifting in order to better adapt to whatever it is that is happening, what are we here to do or to be, right? So these are kind of the questions that I'm asking myself right now. And I posted in the Naturally Conscious community. The Naturally Conscious community, for those of you that are new around here, is my online platform specifically for nourishing your plant reawakening. So it's about these types of conversations. It's about working directly with kin for the answers. And I posted that I have yet to reach out to the plants of the area, of any of these areas, because I feel like it's not the time. It's way too early. I have been trying to work with my plants, the plants that are my plant partners here, to really get to a different space, a headspace that allows me to feel like I am processing this in a way that allows me to honor my humanness, my grief, my fears, my worries. I mean, as I look outside, I have a beautiful river that passes by my house, and I'm staring at it, and the water level is so incredibly low. And we're heading into the fall. We're not going to get a replenishment of that water level. And this is an area that's usually extremely green because there is so much water that flows through it. And at the same time, as I'm looking at this low water level, I'm a little bit thankful because I'm a little bit traumatized by what has just happened and what has come through my home state, because I'm originally from Florida. So I'm used to hurricanes. I know hurricanes. I lived through Hurricane Andrew, which was in 1992, and it was catastrophic, category 5 hurricane, where luckily my home was one of what we call it, the last of the good construction in Miami at that time, because it was built in a really solid foundation, really well built. So my house had no damage. But my best friend at the time, who lived maybe about 15 minutes from my house, her house was completely destroyed. She had to move in with me while her family rebuilt. I had another, friend of mine, my high school boyfriend, who lived also about 10 minutes away from me, and his house, he lost half of his house, just completely disappeared. And, his family had to rebuild and such. So I understand that type of destruction. I don't know why that feels more normalized, probably because Miami is an area that has always had hurricanes pass through it. It has always had to deal with that kind of water. We know sea level is rising. We are at sea level in Miami. So it's kind of like the risk, in some ways, there's a part of me that sort of deals with forest fires, most forest fires, not all, a little bit with that same attitude, which is like, we know we're building in an area that is prone to this, and therefore it's about trying to figure out how to adapt to the local environment. But what's happened right now with this latest hurricane is so out of character that it's such a big indication of the changes that are happening and how rapidly they're going to affect us, that it does take you aback. It takes you a minute to process it. I do sit there and I say to myself, okay, this is our present. Do I like that we've gotten there? No. Do I feel like this is way more rapid than it could have been or should have been, or whatever words you want to use? Sure. But as my client, said, we're here now. And so all we can do is figure out, what are our next steps? What is my role as a human being in this, in harmony with the plants? What are we supposed to do? Where are we supposed to go? And I think that that's really the question to ask ourselves. What are the I don't even have really, really great words for you folks. I'm doing my best. Like, what I posted in the Naturally Conscious community was really about the fact that this trauma feels so raw right now that I'm still trying to grasp my understanding from an ecosystem perspective. In other words, what is the adaptation, excuse me, that the planet was trying to do? What is that hurricane as an entity? What was the hurricane's sort of movement and purpose? Where are we going from here? And more importantly, where should we go? That's a big part of it. I was actually really happy to see that there were some news articles that were coming out about some of the major trees or plants lost. And I do think that that's actually quite a beautiful too, in the sense that it's not happening enough, but there's this sort of recognition that not just humans lost everything, but there's lots of plants that, gave their lives in this. And there are many, many different types of beings and organisms that also, from animals and insects and, plants, as well as many, many different other species and kingdoms, mushrooms and everything, that did lose their lives in this. It's not just a human's tragedy. It's something that happens across the board. And so with that knowledge, and with the knowledge that this is only going to intensify right now, the acceleration of our planet's change in this lifetime, um, is inevitable, right? We're in it. We're in the middle of it. And one of the things about working with plants that has always given me peace of mind is that aspect of adaptation, in the sense that since the very beginning, one of the major elements that for me became kind of a beacon, as a person who, it can be very, very practical, but still have like a deep seated fear around certain types of things like death and my approach to certain kinds of situations. One of the things that has always been this big beacon of hope, or how do I say this peace inducing feeling, is the fact that the more that I reawaken my plantness, the more that I step into myself as a being of nature, the more my body can adapt. The more that and that doesn't mean accept stuff that I shouldn't be accepting, but adapt in the sense of bring myself into harmony with the environment around me. I used to call myself a chameleon because I have always had this sort of ability to adapt, intellectually as well as behaviorally and culturally, to wherever it is that I'm at. And I feel like this work with the plants has elevated that also to my physicality, from the way my body reacts to the location, whether it's food, whether it's altitude, whether it's water levels and temperature. I feel how different my body behaves when I'm home here in Damanhur, in the first city, which is, in the mountains and cooler temperatures, than when I go back to my hometown in Miami and I'm in the heat. Like here, I struggle with heat in a way that I don't struggle with heat in Miami, because the heat here is to a certain extent unnatural. It's outside of the natural rhythms, of some things. And so therefore my body hasn't adjusted to it yet. It's still doing that process, where instead it's adjusted pretty well to the cold. Like the temperature that I have in my room right now, if I was to be in Miami with this exact same temperature, I would be freezing cold. But here I'm relatively comfortable because, again, my body adapts to it, and it adapts to the types of plants, the flora that's here, to, the pollen in the air. Like, one of the big pieces that I have been working with the plant world, as you've heard me talk about so many times, is this concept of adaptation, emotional as well and spiritual adaptation, but also very much physical adaptation. And as a matter of fact, one of the projects that I'm sort of involved with, and I'm hoping to expand on with a group of researchers. It's not my project, it's a project I came into to help sort of make connections for people, to do my little plant networking thing and create an ecosystem for it, is this idea of this green DNA that we might have, and our reawakening of parts of ourselves, of extra senses, which is a big topic that I have been researching for many years, of how do we embody our plantness to enhance different senses of ours. And by enhancing those senses, we're able to then better adapt to our physical environment. And I think that that might be the answer for me. Going back is not a possibility anymore. Climate change is constant, and this accelerated, some would say induced, climate change is here. We're past, I think, the point of thinking that we can't, like, we're going to be able to completely stop this motion. I do think we have to massively change our behaviors. And I think about that every single day when I look at everything around my house, and how do I make sure, that I, do all the R's before I ever recycle. I want to reuse, and I want to restore, and I want to do everything so that I am purchasing as little as possible, which I have to do another episode on that, because as I travel into certain areas where consumerism kind of drives everything, but not so much as like doing things, but buying things, I find that sometimes I do very little in certain places because I don't want to go shopping. But that's another story altogether, and I'll get there. But anyways, in the perspective of where going back is not a possibility, all we can do is move forward. Our planet is evolving at a pace that finally we can see, right? Everything is moving so fast that now it becomes part of our human vision, which it hasn't been. It's been outside of our human perception. But as our perceptions also come online, and as our ability, as everything starts to accelerate, what was once imperceivable is now aligned to our human perceptions, and our access to the media makes it even more visible to have that. So every move that nature makes is like right there in our face in just, a few minutes type of thing. So given that, all I can really focus on right now, I feel, for me, is one of it is education, for sure. I mean, that's a big part of it, and also adaptation. I'm working with my body, I'm working with my field, I'm working with my networks, and especially working with my clients to see where am I supposed to adapt? Where am I supposed to instead not adapt? Where am I supposed to, resist or push back or all of these types of things? And where instead am I supposed to adapt? Where am I supposed to be working with my senses to enhance certain areas? There is a sunlight that is coming in, and so I should probably look really washed out, but I have to say I'm thankful. I had the windows open when I first started to record because it's a cloudy day, and so I'm like, oh, it'll be fine, and it'll be a nice soft light. Now instead the sun is peeking through, and I feel like I have this light in my eyes. But you know what? That's okay. It's fine. It's what it's going to be. But what I'm saying is, like, I feel like I'm working really hard to expand my perceptions, expand my senses, in order to be able to more subtly adapt to things, in order for my body to be able to take in more water. I found that this summer season, especially here where I live, it wasn't wet from the perspective of lots and lots of rain, but I felt more water in the air than I even do when I'm in Miami and the humidity is like at 110,000, percent. I felt I felt my clothing wet, my bed wet at night because the amount of moisture in the air. And I actually did read a study that's saying that is a true thing. It's a little bit separate than humidity, but there seems to be a more precipitation that's staying in the air, and that's causing this other kind of feeling. I'm actually found in my own home, like things, because we don't do air conditioning here where I am. So I found things that somewhat rotted because they were wet. And so adapting to that, modifying the way that I live as well as the way that I act, but also modifying my own body to be able to breathe better in that is a big part of my work with the plant world. Understanding how is it that I can learn from all of this adaptation. For example, in my house, there's many succulents or cacti or aloes, like different plants that are from very hot climates. I never purchased any of them. They're all rescues. Almost everybody in my house is a rescue, like who lives with me. And for example, one of the succulents that lives actually next door, at one point while the person was out of town, when the person came back from being out of town, so we're talking about a person that wasn't even home, so not watering this plant, had been out of town for several months, came home, and the plant, which was a succulent, had completely fallen over because it's as if he had been overwatered. And this was from the moisture of the air. That's how strong it was. This moisture caused this plant to keel over from overwatering when the plant had not been watered for several months. So that gives you an indication of how much that's changed. So I have been nursing this plant back to health. The plant was not that big, just about that big. And he turned into three little plants because that's what I was able to rescue. And two of them are doing quite well. One I'm looking at right now is okay. But there is a little bit of growth. It's succulent. He is a succulent, so he grows very, very slow. But I am working with these plants to better understand, why were you not able to adapt to the water? What is changing? What can I change about myself? And that's something that I'm asking a lot of the different succulents here. How do I deal with this hot climate? How have you adapted to the cold? Right? Because we are in a place that is cold, and sure, I have the heaters on during the summer, but during the winter, but I don't keep the heaters on so high that these plants would be living in the same tropical environment that they're used to. They do get a lot of sun. We have full sun, but, and I have them placed in locations. But I try to ask these types of questions, to sit with the plants in this aspect, to test my own body's reaction. How can I expand the ability of my body to adapt to what is inevitably changing in the way our planet works? Is it going to happen in one lifetime? Okay, probably not. But I do feel like some things are changing, and that is helping me better understand. And that helps me come into a flow with the planet that helps me better understand, usually when tragedy strikes. That does not mean, it also pisses me off when I see some of the solutions or some of what some entities are doing relating to trying anyways, I'm not going to get into a rant. I'm trying not to get into a rant. I really want this to be positive because I want this to be something that gives you more tools to dealing with this. I think at some point I will connect in to many of the plants that are living through these current situations, or maybe tap into some of the plants that I work with and see if any of them could connect, because I think that might be a little bit gentler of an approach. I don't want to do that now. I want to give space and time for the plants to be able to just all them, for also kin to be able to deal with the aftermath of where they are. But I do think I'm going to do that at some point. I'll make sure I share that with you. And in the meantime, I think the best I can do is to really just keep focusing on how do I integrate all of this change into my life? What does my life look like as I fully step into this evolutive process and I more actively guide it, and instead of letting it just sort of guide me? Where is it? And this is a big question that I ask myself, but also of all my clients, and it's one of the things that we work on when we're doing, coaching, is what is your role in this? Where are you supposed to be going with this? What direction are you as an individual, as well as a member of the collective, supposed to take this? What are the relationships you need to build with yourself as well as with others? And others, I mean other kin, others with an S and a capital O, and others of every level. What are the relationships that you need to create in order to fully live the purpose that you have in this life and to continue on the mission that your soul is taking? Where are you supposed to go? And when is it right for you to stop and fight? Because, hey, even plants fight. There are times when plants attack, there are plants that defend, there's fighting that happens in any kind of environment. And there are times when you adapt, and understanding how that happens. How do you change over time? How does a plant modify their body physically in order to be able to be more in tune with the climate and the environment that is changing? Because remember, as a plant changes, then the environment changes. And as the environment changes, the plant has to change. So there's this constant motion back and forth. And this is really the heart of what I, work on for myself, but also with all my clients. Because in order to be your authentic self, you have to really know who you are today, but be completely open to that doubt that I was talking about earlier, that you're not supposed to stay that way, that, or that that you're supposed to connect with someone else, or you're supposed to instead modify some part of yourself. And we as human beings are not very good at this whole modification thing. This whole adaptation thing is not really a good part of us. We see it as a negative, as if you're giving yourself up, but I don't see it as a giving anything up about myself. I see it as, how do I expand or evolve into the direction that I'm supposed to be going? And I think that that's really what gives me hope. What gives me hope is that the planet is changing, it's moving, and I guess I do really believe that we as human beings have the opportunity to adapt. And that's why sometimes the conversations around climate change, you'll notice that I don't really use climate change as a terminology or as as a talking point very often. Not because I don't believe in climate change. I absolutely believe in climate change. I absolutely believe our climate is completely changing. Our planet is changing. I, at the same time, also believe that we need to make modifications as individuals, as well as cultures and societies and companies and all that type of thing, is one part of it, because there is a piece, like I said, where we fight, where we stop, and another part of it is also adapting. Because I do think that some parts of these are natural cycles that we have humanly put obstacles in the middle of. It's, we've planted ourselves into locations and places and situations that it's inevitable that the planet is going to retake that space, because that's a space that's always belonged to someone else, type of thing. So I do think that there's a lot of different discussion points that are happening here. And I'm excited on some of them. I know that that's a really horrible thing to say right now, given the tragedy that's happening, but I am excited because I do see more of these conversations happening. I do see a lot more. I'm excited with my clients to see how much they're stepping into their own place of education or personal change, or from a professional, or as well as a personal evolution, and how much more authentic they are, and therefore the peace, the growth, the change, the ability for you to be a member of your ecosystem with all of these different pieces. It's just really exciting. And actually, on that note, I want to share with you, because these are the types of things that give me hope. I want to share with you one of our eco-conscious business partners that I think really embody the direction that we want to be going. And one of those things that we thought was not possible to do, or that we as humans kind of said, no, it's inevitable that we're supposed to do this in a way that harms the planet, when there is ways to do it that do not harm the planet. Are you looking for a phone that aligns with your values? Let me introduce you to the Fairphone, the world's most ecological phone. Their newest model, the Fairphone 5, which is my phone, I love my Fairphone 5, is a game changer. It's made with more fair and recycled materials than ever, and it's designed to last, future-proofed with performance and software support until 2031. Who offers you support until 2031? That's right, 10 years of smooth, fast, and secure use. Fairphone doesn't just talk about sustainability, they live it. They offer a 5-year warranty, modular parts that makes repairs at home easy, and even offset the electronic waste you contribute when buying their phone, making it e-waste neutral. All you have to do is go to tigrilagardenia.com/Fairphone for a €50 or $55 discount. The link is in the show notes, because owning a Fairphone means taking pride in what you own and caring for our planet. There's still so much I want to process, but I think sitting here and trying to process this with you is a little bit, I don't know. I just think it's going to take some time. It's going to take time. And I really appreciate that you've been here that you're a part of this conversation. And so if you're feeling drawn to have more of these conversations, or if you're looking for your own place in these conversations, I'd love to connect with you. You can book a call with me through the link in the show notes, or we can dive into what support you need. We can also talk about it in the Naturally Conscious community. So on my website, you will find details about all the different things that I have to offer to help you better connect with the plant world, and in and of itself, connect with yourself. So if you're looking for ongoing community and also ongoing support, you found it all between me and the Naturally Conscious community, which is our vibrant online space for deepening this connection to plant wisdom. So I'd love to see you there. I'd love to connect with you. I'd love to hear about your experience. More than anything, I'd love to walk this path of evolution together, because remember, we are a giant worldwide ecosystem. So every change you make, every change I make, every change every person makes affects all of us. I think that's it for this episode. I could probably go on for hours on this topic, but I want to hear your thoughts. So if you enjoyed it, remember to like and comment and subscribe. And remember, resist the urge to hold back your emerging green brilliance. That's it for me, Tigre Gardenia. I'm out. Thanks for listening to this episode of ReConnect with Plant Wisdom. Intro and outro music by Steve Shuley and Poinsettia from The Singing Life of Plants. So join me, Tigrila Gardenia, and my plant collaborators next time on ReConnect with Plant Wisdom. Speak soon.